Hello, a very good morning. It's 3 minutes past 11 here on LBC. We may well talk a little bit more about Sri Lanka during the course of this hour if there are any developments, but Majid Nawaz will be continuing the conversation on this terrible atrocity after midday. Well, in the next hour, we're going to be talking to Alastair Campbell, editor-at-large of the New European, former director of communications to Tony Blair. You can watch us, if you really must, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on the LBC website on our YouTube feed. He's actually here in his running shorts, so hopefully the cameras don't go down that low.
Roll my legs in.
So you say.
I'm running home.
Right.
So that's why I'm dressed like this.
Right, well, I want to talk predominantly about Brexit and the European elections for obvious reasons. I keep hearing in all the news bulletins, sort of the European elections, if they happen. Do you actually think they are definitely going to happen?
I think it's highly likely that they will, but it is extraordinary that both the main parties seem to be absolutely terrified of the thought. And it is
well, you can see why, can't you?
Well, up to a point. I mean, I wrote a piece in The Standard a few weeks ago. I actually think this is a massive opportunity for Labour, if only they would seize it. But they seem petrified of their own shadow on this. And of course, this idea of Nigel Farage, for whom you're standing in, because I presume he can't do the programme while he's a candidate, but, you know, it's not surprising that he's had a bit of a lift because nobody else is campaigning. The other parties are just not engaging in this at all. So it's like we've got a non-campaign. So I think they're an opportunity for Labour. I can see why the Conservatives are desperate to avoid them because, you know, if your whole sort of modus operandi is Theresa May as Prime Minister, I'm desperate to get Brexit across the line, then you're saying it's clearly a mark of failure if you're having to have the European elections. But I think we will have them. I think on my side of the argument, I think we should welcome them. And I think we should then fight to show that there is a massive appetite in this country to stay in the European Union.
Isn't it, though, a little odd that the Remain supporting groups, and by which I mean the Liberal Democrats, the Independent Group, Change UK, as they're going to be fighting the elections, the Green Party, possibly even the Labour Party, that they aren't all coming together to put up a slate of candidates rather than fight each other? Because you've got essentially Nigel Farage saying, well, if you voted Leave, we're the party for you, and there's a great logic to that. Wouldn't it have been better to have had a unified front on your side of the argument as well?
I totally get why you say that, but I think it underestimates the kind of complexity of the politics that are attached to this. If you're the independent group, Change UK, and I think this is something that, you know, has been difficult on the People's Vote campaign because some of the MPs who are most closely involved in that, they've been fundamental to the success of the People's Vote campaign in terms of getting from a standing start to where we are now. But if you like, their prime reason for being now is to try to establish themselves as a political force. So I guess they've had to make a judgment. I'm not saying whether I agree with it or disagree with it, but I understand that they have had to make a judgment to say these elections are an opportunity for us to kind of, you know, make our mark. Logic is with you in what you've just said, but we're in such illogical political times. And likewise, I mean, I think the Liberal Democrats were probably keen for this. The Greens, I mean, you know, we're just down the road, you've got these climate change protests going on. You can probably see why for the Green Party they want to kind of carve out a niche on the European issues, but also in the environment. So I think it's more complicated. And you're right that Nigel Farage, the reason why Nigel Farage is, look, one, he's a good campaigner, you've got to give him that. But also he's out there with a very clear message, totally misleading in my view, in that one, he's saying Brexit's easily done, and two, he's saying that it's an answer to people's problems. Neither of those are true. But he's got nobody of the main political parties challenging his narrative. And so,
why do you think that is?
Because they're scared of these elections and they're scared of the debate.
Well, there was an easy way not to have them. There still is an easy way not to have them, isn't there? To get the withdrawal bill through.
Yeah, but hold on a minute. You're not in favour of this withdrawal bill, and you're a Brexiteer.
Well, let's leave me out of it. I'm here to interview you rather than give my views.
OK, but the point I'm making is that when you say there's an easy way to get out of this, it's not easy.
Well,
because so many of the people on your side, on the Brexit side of the argument, they don't support her withdrawal agreement for very good reasons. But many people on the Remain side don't support it for very good reasons.
If it had gone through before the 29th of March, we wouldn't be having this conversation now, would we?
But it didn't go through.
But it still could. That's my point.
Yes, it could. But what has changed in the substance of that withdrawal agreement?
Nothing.
Exactly. So why should anybody who voted against it before, why should they vote for it now? And I'll tell you, my fear at the moment is that this so-called Farage surge, which I don't think has actually got that much.
What, from 0 to 27% in 10 days?
No, I'm saying it's real in that is what is being expressed in the polls. But if you have, I go back to the point I make, if you are allowed to pursue this narrative virtually unchallenged by the other parties, then you're going to get that. But my point is, I think he's utterly beatable if the main parties decide to engage in this in a proper way and show some leadership.
But they're not going to, are they?
Well, you mentioned Tom Watson's article this morning. I think that is actually where the Labour Party needs to be. Where did Jeremy Corbyn get? And this just underlines how ridiculous and extraordinary our politics are at the moment, that the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party says that, and the reason why it makes news is because people sort of think...
Just explain what he said.
Well, he's basically saying that if Labour, the way to stop Farage is for Labour to be unequivocally in favour of a people's vote, unequivocally in favour of saying whatever the outcome of these negotiations, it's now so far removed from what was promised in 2016, it should go back to the people. I honestly believe, I know this is kind of, what I think, and therefore you've always got to aim off a bit for that, but just the political strategic brain in me says that is the way for Labour to do well, because Farage does well in this because of clarity and simplicity of message. Labour's message, I mean, you and I get it, but nobody can pretend it's straightforward. And even now...
But how can it be straightforward? You say Nigel Farage has got a simplistic message. Now you're saying that Labour have got to have a simplistic message.
No, I'm saying they could have, and the message would be, as I've just set it out, whatever the outcome of these negotiations, it has to go back to the people. That's a simple message. And what's more, I think it's where the public are. Now, you're going to get, of course, there are millions of people...
Well, just on that, you think that's where the public are. There's no evidence for that, is there?
There
is,
actually.
You have to, and I know we can say, oh, well, polls don't matter, but actually, if you look at the polls, I would say there has been a bit of a shift towards that, but that is not where the mass of the public are.
Well, neither of us can speak for the mass of the public, but you have to trust your own instincts as well as looking at polling.
But don't you think that you and I, with our different views on this, we will judge that because inevitably we talk mainly to people that agree with us?
Well, I deliberately go and look out for people who don't necessarily agree with us.
So do I. I encourage people to phone in who don't agree with me.
But I'll tell you, but listen, just let me give you one sort of stat, which I think is quite revealing. Just over 4 million people voted Labour in the last European elections, okay? More than 6 million signed that revoke petition in a matter of days. Now, I know it's easy to sign a petition, but that's an expression of a view. You can argue about how many people went on the People's Vote March a few weeks ago, whether it was 1 million or less than 1 million or more than 1 million. It was a hell of a lot of people. And I always used to say, when we were sitting and looking out the window at the Iraq March, the march against the Iraq War, I can remember saying to Tony, for every single person who goes on a march, there's probably another 10 who thought about it. Because
that had a huge
view.
amount of impact on Tony Blair, presumably.
No, it didn't, because Parliament, let me remind you, we're a parliamentary democracy and Parliament voted for the action that was taken. The reason why we're at this impasse now is because Parliament can't decide and can't agree. That's one of the many reasons I think it should go back to the people. My point is, if you're a politician, if you're Jeremy Corbyn, and presumably, though sometimes I have my doubts, you want to win the general election, you want to be in power, you can't ignore that. That is a political force. You have to recognise and acknowledge that. And we're still having the debate as though we're back in 2016.
He would say, well, hang on a minute, at the last election we stood on a manifesto that said we will implement a Brexit, but in a different kind of way. And we all know that he's been a lifelong Eurosceptic.
Well, at least be honest about that and say you don't want it to happen.
I agree,
right.
But you will understand his need to try and keep his party together as far as is possible. And it's a very difficult one. It was difficult for Labour back in the 1970s when we went in.
But it is extraordinary. Right, so this is a guy who has become leader of the Labour Party, in large part by saying, we've got all these new members coming in and we're going to listen to the members. The members are pretty much united behind the position that I've set out. And yet, either because of his instincts or because of his history or because of the people around him, whatever it might be, he leans the other way most of the time. Tom Watson has to do what he's done today because he knows that Jeremy Corbyn wouldn't say that.
And Tom Watson...
That is not a united position, but at least it's leadership.
It isn't, but Tom Watson, as you know more about the Labour Party constitution than I do, but he is unsackable as deputy leader. Jeremy Corbyn can't get rid of him. He can sack anybody in his shadow cabinet apart from Tom Watson. Is that right?
Yeah, he's been elected by the members, but I mean, the politics of it are that they could certainly organise another leadership election if they wanted to, but I don't think that would necessarily help anybody. But I think the other thing to say, I mean, so much of this is about leadership. And at the moment, on both sides, frankly, we have leaders who aren't leading. Theresa May's not a leader. She's not led this process. She's tried to manage it. Jeremy Corbyn is trying to manage a process. He's not leading it. Leadership is about saying, this is where we want to end up.
Yes, it is. But leaders of political parties have to be pragmatic as well. They can't just say, well, I'm going to do this, whether you like it or not.
Wait a minute. I would argue he's not being pragmatic. The pragmatic thing to do at the moment is actually to lead on the position that I've set out.
You could argue that he's actually been very successful in his leadership on this because he's allowed Keir Starmer to essentially manufacture a policy which he doesn't really agree with himself, and he's played to all different parts of the Labour Party, and therefore held it together.
Okay,
that is an achievement of sorts.
Yeah, but I just think leadership, particularly on an issue that is so defining, so big. I mean, this stuff that's happening at the moment is going to be written about in history books for centuries. This is the future of our country being made or not made. Now, at that point, I just think, we talked earlier about clarity. I don't mean the sort of Farage-style clarity, if you say what people want to hear, you make it sound easy when it's not. I mean clarity that actually challenges the country with, these are the real choices that we face, and this is the judgment that I'm making.
And that's what Nigel Farage would argue he's doing.
Well, and I would argue that I'd argue he's doing that from a strategic perspective, but he's not being honest about what these choices mean. There is no easy way of doing this, and he tries to pretend there is. This idea about these MPs, the sort of anti-politics thing, what I think we've seen, to be fair to MPs have been doing their job. They have been looking at the detail of an agreement and saying, this isn't good enough. Now, you and I agree on that. So why should you expect MPs to vote for something that they do not think either represents the national interest?
Well, I argue that they should vote for it in the end, because I felt that if we didn't leave the European Union on the 29th of March, we probably never would, and I still believe that. And I think, well done to the likes of Andrew Bridge and Jacob Rees-Mogg, who, actually, he did vote for it in the end, didn't he? But these people have actually stopped us leaving the European Union in any form. Now, they would argue, well, leaving in this form, it isn't really leaving. Well, it's 70% of leaving, and often you do have to be pragmatic and think, well, 70% is better than 0%. And that's why, even though I don't like the agreement, in the end, I probably, had I been an MP, would have supported
my point about the way Nigel Farage is, he stands up at his meetings and his rallies and he says that this is the political class letting you down.
Well, it is.
Well, wait a minute. One, he is the political class. You couldn't get a more full-time politician than Nigel Farage. And secondly, he is an elite, as is Boris Johnson, as is Jacob Rees-Mogg. But the other point I'd make is that he's trying to pretend that it's straightforward. They just have to do this.
Well,
it is not straightforward.
What he's tapping into,
I know what he's tapping into. That's what he's good at.
The feeling that it's been a Remainer Parliament, and therefore...
That's nonsense, though.
Well, it's not nonsense. Well, you've had the majority of a huge majority of constituencies voting Leave, and you've got a huge majority of MPs who voted Remain. Now, somewhere, and I'm not arguing that we have to be a mandatory democracy or a representative democracy, I completely get that, but in the end, people think the MPs have let them down, and that's what he's playing to very successfully.
Yeah, because, not least because... he has a platform like this most of the time where he can say that the whole time. And he can, as you say, it's playing into it.
A lot of people phone in and challenge him on that.
A lot of people do phone in, and a lot of people do agree with him.
In fact, next Sunday they're going to have a chance to phone into him, because he's going to be my guest on his own show, if you see what I mean.
Well, that would be fun. I'm sure you'll have a lovely time, and I might even phone in.
You do.
But the point I'm making, Ian, is that yes, people feel like that, and yes, he taps into that. My point is he setting out an honest position either about the reality of Brexit or about the challenges facing the country? And he's not. And Labour and the Tories need to call that out.
Well, he would argue he absolutely is, because he's saying, look, the logic of this is we voted Leave, so we leave. We don't need a withdrawal agreement. We can just leave. Now, you would say
nonsense.
that... you think that's nonsense.
What does
He
we just
doesn't.
leave mean?
Well, it means that we leave with no deal and go onto WTO rules.
Right. So, okay. Be honest about that.
I don't want to have an argument about that because that's his position.
Be honest about that, and then allow that to be properly scrutinised and properly challenged. At the moment, nobody is challenging over anything.
Well, you are.
That's why he's doing well in the polls.
Well, we will see. More from Alastair Campbell in just a moment. And we will be taking your calls. In fact, we haven't got a single line into the building free at the moment. But if you can't succeed now, do try again. It's 18 minutes past 11.
This is LBC.
You up to date? I ain't talking fashion trends, sunshine. I'm talking about the latest software and app updates. Here's the thing. Hackers love it when you don't install them. They can use weaknesses in outdated software to attack your device. And if your identity gets nicked, any Tom, Dick or Harry can pretend to be you. So watch your back out there and keep your software and apps up to date. All right? Be cyber aware. Learn more at cyberaware.gov.uk.
Make the most of the bank holiday at Car Giant. We make car buying easy with over 40 years experience and amazingly low prices on over 6,000 cars in stock. We'll find a car that's right for you and you can drive it home the very same day. Giant choice, giant savings. Car Giant. See the cars and book a test drive now at cargiant.co.uk.
It's how London buys its cars. Car Giant.
It's time to join the millions of people that meet happy with Zoom video conferencing. With stunning HD video, crisp audio, and instant wireless sharing across any mobile, tablet, or desktop device. But the best thing about Zoom? It just works. So ditch the distractions, join the movement, and meet happy with Zoom video conferencing. Visit zoom.us to set up your free account today. That's zoom.us. Zoom video conferencing.
Don't miss amazing extra savings in the Furniture Village sale this Easter. Save even more on a huge choice of sofas, dining and beds. In-store and online, we're sure there's something for you in the Furniture Village sale. But hurry, many offers end Easter Monday.
Some things are never coming back, like avocado bathrooms, dinosaurs, and fingers crossed, the mullet. But a lost credit card, they often turn up. Thankfully, with a simple tap, the NatWest app lets you lock your card if you misplace it and unlock it if you find it. We're always thinking of new ways to make it easier to control your banking. Search NatWest Easier Banking. NatWest, we are what we do.
MasterCard credit cards only. App eligibility criteria applies.
All that's missing from my flower bed is some actual flowers.
For an instant injection of colour, get to B&Q. This bank holiday weekend with a massive 20% off all outdoor plants. And that's on top of any current multi-buy offers or discounts. Hurry, offer ends this Monday. You can do it when you B&Q it. Turf seeds and bulbs not included.
For hundreds of years, Indian food has been about sharing great food with the people you love. For over 5 years, Manjal Restaurant have brought North and South India together in the heart of London. And due to its success, now we've come to Chigwell Loughton. Experience the essence of India and make memories with Manjal. Book now at manjalrestaurant.com.
Iain Dale on LBC.
22 minutes past 11. Alastair Campbell is here. He's about to take your calls. 0345 6060 973. Let me just read you this text from Andy in Portsmouth. Please ask Alastair, are you scared of Nigel Farage's Brexit party? As everyone I know, Labour or Conservative voters have now said they'd vote for this new party even in a general election. From people I talk to, there's a real fresh energy for this new party. The Brexit party feels as though it represents the majority view of the country outside of London and without the negative attitude that comes with UKIP. The most interesting part of that was the outside London bit. Do you think sometimes that people who, on your side of the argument, who live and breathe London, often don't really get that the rest of the country thinks in a very different way?
No, I don't. I think that's honestly. I think that's one of the many caricatures in this. More people voted Leave in London than voted at all in parts of the north. So I bump into Leavers in London. I bump into Remainers in Burnley. I think there was a very, very
Must
good
be a
article.
rare occurrence in Burnley.
It's not a rare occurrence, actually. It really isn't. And I think the way that this thing about the metropolitan elite, I think there is a metropolitan media elite, and I think they have some very odd views about the whole of the country. And there was a very good article in the Yorkshire Post and the Northern Echo last week it was written by Mary Cray, MP for Wakefield, Anna Turley, MP for Redcar, I think Bridget Phillipson from Sunderland. And they wrote a piece about how sick to death they are of hearing this view of the North by people in the South that is this homogenous, all angry, all desperate to, put Brexit over the line. And they're not. Some are, just as some are in London. So I don't accept that. I do accept that Nigel Farage has got off to a very good start because, as I said earlier, he's got a very clear message. The Brexit Party, it's a very clear, it's obvious.
But why haven't the independent group got off to that start? Because they have a very clear message as well. Because predominantly it is they want a second referendum. They want to have lots of other policies too. But
exactly.
But that's the thing that unites them. That's what brought them together.
That is, and you'll have to ask them about why they haven't really capitalised on that massive sort of energy and publicity they had at the start. Whether it's because there haven't been more MPs who've come over, I don't know. But I think it's, in the end, look, Nigel Farage, as he said himself, he's been on this game, he's been doing this for 20 odd years. And, fair play to him, he just keeps going. And I kind of respect that in anybody. But I do think that the moment he's getting away with it. So I would say to the Chuckers and the Anna Soubries and the others in the independent group, why are they not going after him a lot harder? I said the same to the Labour Party. Why are they not going after him? And they're probably saying, oh, well, it'll ventilate, it'll give him too much oxygen. Well, he's got it. He's created that for himself. So you cannot just let it go by default.
Do you think that there should be sort of leader debates in the European referendum campaign? Because I'm going to try and put one on here, and I'm just imagining what the response from some of the parties is going to be.
I think that, look, this is what I find extraordinary at the moment, is we've got politicians who appear to me to be scared of politics. The Tory party are terrified of testing the will of the people on Brexit. We've now got this situation. Betty Boothroyd said this at our rally the other week. She said, you've got this situation where the argument from the politicians is, well, we can't have another referendum because if we do, it'd mean having the European elections. And it's like, so we're scared, because we're scared of having a vote on something, we'll not have a vote on something. And Theresa May's been driven to it purely by her inability to lead and her inability to get something undeliverable over the line. So I find the whole thing extraordinary. I find it absolutely baffling.
What about the timetable here? Let's go away from the European elections and look at the prospect of a second referendum. Because the timetable that the European Union have laid down now, that the next deadline is the end of October. Now, I severely doubt whether that will actually be a firm deadline. There isn't time to have a referendum between now and then. Some people think, well, you could concertina it. But if you have a referendum, and I hope you'd agree with this, everybody's got to buy into the timetable for it. They've got to buy into the question that's going to be asked. And given the amount of time that the legislation would have to take to get through Parliament, and that we have the summer break as well, given the fact that the Electoral Commission have a statutory 14 weeks to decide on the question, any attempt by whoever to concertina that is going to be seen as an attempt to rig it one way or the other, isn't it?
But you see, this is why I felt that ultimately, when Theresa May went to the European Summit recently, which is what gave this so-called flextension, and I think the European Union leaders, they've hung together pretty well. They've been pretty clear. They've been pretty strategic. I think some of them are getting completely fed up with us in a really quite a big way, and that is, from my side of the argument, a very worrying thing. But I think Tusk in particular has been absolutely heroic in his support for Britain throughout this whole process, and that's been important. But I think that if we watch, what I think she should have done is actually have gone there and said, look, it's pretty obvious. There's no point pretending anymore. We're in a bit of a mess. We are going to need time for this. It might mean this. It might mean this. Might be an election. Might be a referendum. Give us the time we need to sort ourselves out. I think that actually would have been the right thing to do, even though I accept it would have given her even greater.
Which is what her cabinet actually agreed that she should do, as I understand it.
And she went and did what she did, and it's a bit of a muddle and it's a bit of a mess. I think that what the European Union would give us, any extension we wanted, to do is actually to present the process that would lead to this being resolved. So all of the questions you raised, whatever time that takes, I think they would be up for that. Now, whether she would do that, I just don't know, because I keep speaking to and hearing from people who are meant to be close to her, and they say, oh, she understands this and she understands that, but every public utterance says to me she just thinks her deal is the deal and it's the only deal in town, and therefore she's going to do everything she can to get it through.
We're going to go to calls in a second, but just one question about Andrew Adonis. He's been selected as a candidate, I think, in the South West region for Labour. When he was on LBC with me back in September, he, and this video is circulating on Twitter, I've seen over the last 24 hours. Have you seen it? Well, he says that, actually, we've got a clip of it. Let's just play it to you.
If you're a Brexiter, I hope you won't vote for the Labour Party, because the Labour Party is moving increasingly against Brexit.
30 to 40% of Labour Party voters support Brexit.
But, well, by definition, therefore, the majority were against Brexit. One does the maths on that.
So you ignore all of those Brexit voters in Northern Labour constituencies?
No, don't ignore them at all. But I wouldn't vote Labour if you want to stop Brexit. If you want to stop Brexit, though, so if you want Brexit, if you want to stop Brexit, though, I think you should vote Labour. What you want is Brexit delivered. You should vote for the party that's going to deliver Brexit, which I'm afraid is the Conservatives.
How do you get selected as a Labour candidate when you said something like that?
There'll be other people who be selected as Labour candidates who are actually pro-Brexit.
I doubt it. I can't think of a single one that I've seen that would be supporting Brexit. Can you? Who's that?
You'll have to do your own research. But I mean, she probably won't get. It's probably too low down the list to get to win.
Go on. Who is it? Why are you being so coy?
Well, because she might argue that her position is. I'm misrepresenting the position, but you can have a look at the names. So I think that the point I'm making goes back to what I said earlier about clarity. We can't. You're going to be interviewing presumably lots of candidates other than Nigel Farage. I'm assuming that after you've done Nigel Farage, you will want Richard Corbett, and you'll want.
I don't know about that.
I think you should, because I think actually Richard Corbett is one of the best, and I think one of the worst things about this, the coverage of Europe in our media, the fact that Nigel Farage has been on Question Time 32 times and not one other MEP, to my memory, has ever
Caroline
been.
Lucas was when she was on an MEP. I take the point. Well, we had two MEPs on the programme last week, and we would have had today had we not been covering what we've been covering over the past 2 hours. So we do actually, on this show, we are going to concentrate on
Andrew, as you well know, is a very, very passionate pro-European, anti-Brexit.
But you wouldn't agree with him on that. You would still want Brexit supporting Labour voters to vote Labour in the European elections, presumably.
I want the Labour Party to be very, very clear that they will support putting whatever the outcome of these negotiations are.
Not answering the question that I put to you.
Well, they have to build as much support as they can for a position, but I'm saying that they can win support, including people
let me put the question another way. What is your message to a Brexit supporting Labour voter in the Midlands or the North or London or wherever? Should they vote Labour or should they vote for a pro-Remain party?
That's a judgment they'll have to make, and we haven't yet. What I'm doing now, and the reason I agreed to come into your programme, and the reason I will keep banging out a message in the run-up to this, the Labour Party, look, the clue is in the title. We're coming up to, if they happen, the European elections. Now, 2017, the election, the strong and stable election, fair play to Labour, they did manage to make it not about Brexit and about health and education and jobs and transport and crime and all these other very, very important issues. This is the European parliamentary elections at a time when Brexit is the defining issue of our time. So they have to have a clear line on Brexit, and I think that should be a commitment to a people's vote, whatever the outcome of the negotiations.
We're going to come to your calls in a second. Just a few tweets. Someone says, Alastair Campbell just called Donald Tusk heroic in his treatment of the British people just a few minutes after bemoaning the metropolitan elite for being out of touch with reality.
What's the point of that?
Oh, I don't know. You'll have to ask the tweeter. You can reply to him later.
That's the sort of nonsense argument. He has been there under all sorts of pressures, but he has never run away from the fact that he understands the politics of what's going on in the UK, and I admire that.
All right. Laura Chadwick says, Mr. Campbell, you've got a big shock coming your way. #Nigel Farage. And KB says, well...
That suggests I don't realise what Nigel Farage is doing. I do.
KB says, well, Iain Dale is a closet Remainer and a snowflake to boot. You can't win them all, can you? We'll come to your calls in a second. It's 11:32. Simon Conway's here with the headlines.
A series of explosions at churches and luxury hotels in Sri Lanka have left more than 150 people dead and hundreds more injured. In the past few minutes, the UK's High Commissioner to the country says a number of British citizens are believed to have been caught up in the blasts. No one has yet claimed responsibility, and it's not clear what the motive was. A man has been arrested after 2 suspect devices were found outside homes in Londonderry this morning. It's currently not being linked to terrorism or the murder of journalist Lyra McKee in the city on Thursday. The Queen has arrived at St George's Chapel in Windsor for an Easter Sunday service, which falls on her 93rd birthday. Other members of the royal family are also attending the service. LBC weather, another very warm day for many with plenty of sunshine. Cloudier in northwest Scotland with some rain, a high of 23 degrees.
This is LBC.
So, your accountant does your audit for you, looks at your accounts, calculates your tax, stuff like that. But would you benefit from long-term advice, an expert to look at your business model and help your business grow? And most importantly, someone to look after you, the owner. At Barnes Rofe, our partners get to know their clients and want to become part of their team. Is it time to see what we can do for you? Arrange your free consultation at barnesrofe.com. Barnes Rofe. Clever accountants for business.
If you get BT Superfast Fibre, you'll not only save £108, you'll also get a Google Home on us worth £129. Imagine that, working with a hub that's more powerful than other big providers. Superfast Fibre is $29.99 a month on an 18-month contract with a $9.99 delivery fee. Join by 25th of April to save £108 and get a Google Home. Search BT Broadband. BT, be there.
Prices may change. New customers to verify see bt.com/smartup. 52.49 for month 19. Terms apply.
In the Oak Furnitureland Easter sale, everything's solid hardwood, everything's delivered free, and everything's reduced, including our brand new ranges. So shop now and save on, well, everything in the Easter sale at Oak Furnitureland. There's a store near you. Ends Easter Monday.
Days and weeks can fly by, but if you're worried it's cancer, time can slow down and almost stop. That's why, with Bupa Health Insurance, you can call us about any symptom of cancer without seeing your GP first. Depending on your cover and your symptoms, we could even refer you to a consultant there and then. Bupa Health Insurance. For living. To find out more, search Bupa. Direct access services may not be available for some underwriting methods, and you may need to provide evidence the conditions are not pre-existing.
Psst. Did you know that Pimlico Plumbers have an utterly fabulous 24-hour service for plumbing, heating, drains, roofing, electrics, appliances, carpentry and building? Whatever your predicament, Pimlico Plumbers can send a friendly face to your door within the hour. Shh! And just between us, their work even comes with a 12-month guarantee. They aren't just any old tradesmen, they're Pimlico Plumbers, and they're always available on 0207 928 8888. Or at pimlicoplumbers.com.
It's time to expand, and next door is available. But why are your plans waiting to get off the ground?
Whatever your business, our finance can keep things flowing. We are iWalker, and we offer loans from £1,000 to £200,000. iWalker. Search it how you say it. iWalker, helping business flow.
This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
You can watch us on Facebook, Twitter or the LBC website. Alastair Campbell is here about to take your calls. What could possibly go wrong? Brandon is in Romford. Hello, Brandon.
Good morning, gents. Pleasure to be speaking with you. Alastair, I'm a student currently writing my dissertation on the importance of prime ministerial leadership in the 21st century. I've used both Blair and Cameron as case studies, and you mentioned earlier that our current situation needs a clarity of leadership. My question then is, if you were advising this Prime Minister or the next Prime Minister, what would you argue is needed in prime ministerial leadership going forward for British politics now and over the next 5 or 10 years?
Is this for use in your dissertation? I hope it is.
Yeah. Yes, it is, yeah.
Well done.
I was actually writing my conclusions when I saw that you were going to be coming on.
I hope you're recording this, Brandon.
That's absolutely brilliant. I get so many students writing to me for their dissertations. I do about 1 in 100, but this is the first time I've ever done one live on the radio. I think, I'll tell you that what I think is that, I mean, you've got to go back to when she became Prime Minister. And just as when David Cameron more narrowly than he expected to, won the Scottish referendum, the independence referendum, and then he kind of went on a divisive tack. He went saying, you've had your fun, now it's English votes for English laws. He didn't try to bring the country together. And likewise, I think with Theresa May, she didn't try to bring the country together. Because of the way that she feared of being seen as a Remainer Prime Minister, somebody voted Remain even if she didn't campaign for it. And what she didn't do was that the day she became Prime Minister, actually set them out in terms of her policy objectives on health and education and opportunity and all that, but she didn't actually set out how she was going to try to bring the country together. And since then, I don't think she's ever fully confronted the decisions that she has to make. She sort of did it at the Chequers, when the Chequers proposal, we used to talk about obsessively, there's now kind of, although it's sort of become Labour's policy in a funny sort of way, but she sort of did it then, and because it led to the resignations and the further divide in the Conservative Party, what she's never done is to confront the real choices and spell out the consequences. And I still think that's what she should do, confront the real choices and spell out the consequences. In the end, when people talk about they want leadership, if we're not careful, what we mean by that is we want a strong man like Trump or Putin or Xi or whatever it might be. Actually, I think in our democracy, what it means is they want leaders who will level with them and set out the honest choices that the country faces. And I don't believe she's done that, and that's what she needs to do now.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your help.
Thank you.
Okay.
I hope you get it first.
On that basis, not so sure.
If it's not good enough, you can come back to me on my website.
All right, Brandon, thank you. Let's go to Catherine in Manchester. Hi, Catherine.
Oh, hi there from a sunny Manchester for a change.
Well, indeed. What would you like to ask?
I'm about to go off to a family Easter gathering, and half my family voted Leave, half voted Remain. Some of the Leavers have changed their mind, some of them haven't. And one thing they keep going on about is when Farage says, we'll just leave on WTO. And I'm no expert, but I've kind of grasped...
Nor is he.
I've kind of grasped that services, which is 80% of our economy, aren't covered under WTO, and it obviously threatens the Good Friday Agreement. But what I'd really like is a really short explanation that I can use to talk to some of my Leaver family who haven't changed their minds.
Are you presumably as somebody who voted Remain and wants to persuade those Leavers who voted Leave to change their minds?
I kind of want to just start dealing in facts as opposed to the rhetoric. I was a kind of a 60% Remainer, 40% Leaver. There's things that need to reform in the EU. I see that. But now I've kind of become 100% Remainer after 3 years of seeing what a mess they've made of everything and learning a lot myself about what the EU does. So I'd really like to challenge this. Let's just leave on WTO and everything will be fine, because as far as I can work it out, it is a disaster.
Well, so WTO, what I think the Brexit side, the Farage side of the argument has done reasonably well, is make this idea of no deal, the code for it has become, we leave on WTO terms and we can trade with the rest of the world, blah, blah, blah. The first thing is, overnight, we lose dozens of trade deals that we have at the moment as members of the European Union. And we become a very small market competing with the very large market is the European Union. I think that is the first big point.
Well, some of them have been rolled over, and there's now a bit more time for others to be rolled over.
Ian is rebutting here with the fact that Liam Fox has made a trip to the Faroe Islands.
Catherine wanted no. Okay, Catherine wanted some facts. It's not just the Faroe Islands. There are lots of different countries.
There aren't that many.
I can Google the list if you want me to.
Go on, then you do that while I'm talking to Catherine. But it's not a very long list, and it's not a very impressive list. The second thing I think you say to them is that if we leave on so-called no deal terms, I was in France recently, and I drove down through Kent, and you just before you go out for your lunch with your friends, Google Operation Stack and look up how quickly, if we have just a few minutes of checks on lorries which currently go through our ports without being stopped, how quickly Kent becomes a car park.
The Port of Calais and the Port of Dover say that shouldn't happen.
They said it shouldn't happen.
Well, no, they've said it won't happen.
No, they've said it shouldn't happen, but then if
because they're not intending to do a lot of extra checks.
In other words, so what is the point of what we're doing? If we're actually not going to take back control of our borders, what is the point? And if I can go, Catherine, to Northern Ireland, Nigel Farage and Rees-Mogg and the rest of them, they say because the European Union don't want a hard border, because the Irish government doesn't want a hard border, the British government doesn't want a hard border, therefore we don't need to have a hard border. If we leave on WTO rules, we will have to have a border because there will have to be checks. And Iain Duncan Smith and these guys, they blather on endlessly about technological solutions. They do not exist. So I think for the chaos that it would cause at our ports, for the shrinking of our market and the fact that we'll have to go and carve out new deals as a much weaker, much smaller market, and the threat to the Good Friday Agreement, I think you've got 3 decent arguments to go and speak to your family if they want to hear.
Well,
that's really interesting. Sorry, can I just...
Go on.
Some of my family have Irish heritage, and my mum, who voted Leave, who's 84, actually said what she's learnt about the Good Friday Agreement and being outside single market customs union and how that's going to threaten, we might have to have a border there. That's actually what's made her change her mind.
Hang on, Catherine. Only if the EU put it up.
No, but hold on a minute, Iain, this is just a nonsense.
No, it's not.
It is.
If the British government has said they won't put it up, the Irish government has said they won't.
Wait a minute. They've said they don't want to. Nobody wants to. If we are out of the... Look, we come out of the political institutions and we come out of the economic institutions, right? We talk about Ireland...
Isn't it strange how the European Union isn't even mentioned in the Good Friday Agreement?
Let me finish. Sorry, the European Union, I was there, don't forget. I was part of the team...
But it isn't in the text, is it?
The European Union was a big part of the support. That border...
It isn't in the text.
That border between the north of Ireland and the Republic, we talk about it as though it's Ireland. That becomes the only land border with the European Union.
Am I right that the European Union isn't mentioned in the text of the Good Friday Agreement?
I'd be very surprised if it's not.
It isn't.
Are you sure about that? It was certainly a very, very big support in the process, for sure.
Yeah.
And that is not to be underestimated.
I think they are signatories to it.
Fine.
But it's that they aren't mentioned in the text. All I'm saying here is that, even Michel Barnier has slightly softened on this now and has said, well, there are forms of technology that can be used in the future. It may not exist right at the moment. He's also said that we could copy what we do in other areas of the European Union, and border checks are not carried out on the border as such, because that's the sensitivity.
Yeah.
So if you have all 3 parties willing to actually look at what the options are, we know that there have been reports from the European Parliament that say this is possible, then you'd like to think that it is possible.
You might like to think all sorts of things. You might like to think you can have your cake and eat it. You might like to think... Yes, it is, because you're dealing in more fantasies. If we leave on no deal, and don't underestimate, if we did leave on no deal, any goodwill that these guys, that your previous tweeter didn't like me being nice about Tusk, but we leave on no deal, say goodbye to the goodwill that actually has been there in trying to make this stuff work. And
I'm not sure there has been much.
Well, I think there has, and I think they've been incredibly tolerant of our utterly dysfunctional politics.
I've got my list of countries that have agreed to roll over. There are 9.
Wow! And let me remind you, what did Liam Fox say? That the day we leave, was it 40 or 60?
There's
I can't
40.
remember. 40 trade deals ready to sign.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's yet another fantasy that's fallen by the wayside. Give me the 9 countries, Iain.
Norway.
Good country.
Iceland.
Nice country.
Caribbean countries.
How many?
Lots of them.
Oh, lots of Caribbeans, okay.
Pacific Islands, lots of them.
Is that Vanuatu and places like
exactly.
that? Super.
Israel,
important country.
That's a big one. Palestinian Authority,
great supporter of that one.
Switzerland, big one.
Yeah, big-ish.
Big one.
Yeah.
Faroe Islands,
yeah. Usually get drawn against Scotland in the Euros.
Eastern and Southern Africa.
Right, so you're making my point for me.
And Chile.
You're making my point for me.
Well, I'm just giving you the fact that 9 out
recently,
of 40 have signed.
Wait a minute.
Which is not what they said would happen. I completely agree with you.
Right, and what happened recently? What was the last trade deal that the European Union signed?
Japan.
Yeah. A big one.
Yeah.
Is Japan, as a country, going to be more or less interested in trade with the European Union or with
Well, I don't think it's an either or, is it?
I think there's a bit of either or.
When you look at Britain as the 5th largest economy in the world, they would... I think they are what, the 3rd or 4th Japan. So it's in their interest as well to sign one with the 5th.
For sure. Yes, of course. But the European Union is a collection of 27. Some of them very sizable economies.
I do know that.
I'm just saying to you, if you're a Prime Minister of Japan or you're a trade negotiator in Japan, which of those two markets is more important?
It's not an either or.
I'm afraid it is.
No, it isn't. It really isn't.
And let me ask
They've already signed one with the EU.
Just go back to Nancy Pelosi. Did you see what she said the other day?
I did say what she said the other day.
Right, did you not think that was quite significant?
Not particularly,
Well,
no.
I think it was. I
didn't think it was surprising.
No, I think it was surprising. I think it was significant that a senior figure in the American political system is basically saying any threat to the Good Friday Agreement and you can wave goodbye to the sort of trade deal you're talking about. So we're going to have to rely on Donald Trump. Well,
I
don't
think that is surprising at all, because Congress has always been difficult about signing off any trade deal.
What we can agree on is that it's incredibly complicated, very, very difficult.
We can agree on that.
And this idea that you just walk away and it's going to be easy, forget it.
And we
that's
can also
Farage's
agree
message.
that we're going to a break at 11:48.
Coming up at 12 on LBC, Majid Nawaz.
At least 192 people, including 35 foreigners, were killed and hundreds injured in a string of blasts that ripped through hotels in Sri Lanka. You probably have so many questions. Join me to understand what's going on.
Majid Nawaz on LBC.
Calling all hard-working minicab drivers. Are you the very best London has to offer? Yes? Then Greyhound Cars, one of South London's oldest and most progressive minicab companies, want to speak to you. Spend less time travelling to jobs and more time earning money. With a very busy day circuit, we have high demand and are now offering great bonuses and mileage rates for the very best drivers. You could pay as low as 10% commission. Start today at greyhoundcars.co.uk.
We're all busy people, which is why when it comes to making a PPI claim, although you can complain directly to your lender or the Financial Ombudsman for free, thousands of people have let the claims guys do all the donkey work for them. So even if you can't find any paperwork or you're not certain you have PPI, make sure you get the claims guys to start your claim before the deadline on the 29th of August 2019. Just text ANSWER to 66777. Text ANSWER to 66777 now.
The Claims Guys.
I want to live in a world where we still have polar bears. I want to live in a world where we can breathe cleaner air. I want to live in a world where our energy supply won't run out. Where we use more sustainable energy. Where we burn less fossil fuels. Where we are kinder to our environment. Where we reduce CO2 emissions. Where we take climate change seriously.
We all want to make big changes to help our planet. But sometimes to make big changes, we have to start small. Smart meters can't solve climate change on their own, but with the smarter, more energy-efficient grid they help to create, they're a start.
I want to live in a beautiful world.
Search I Want a Smart Meter or call 0300 131 5555 today from the campaign for a smarter Britain.
Calls from UK landlines and mobiles charged at a standard rate.
Many dentists refer their own patients on to Darwood and Tanner.
My name is Dr. Mark Kent. I'm a general dental practitioner practicing in a North London suburb. Darwood and Tanner have become my preferred referral practice. I feel that Dr. Andrew Darwood can provide the highest level of implant surgery that is available, together with giving my patients the option of alternative specialist treatments.
Download your information pack today. Search Darwood and Tanner. Your smile is our healthy obsession.
Don't miss amazing extra savings in the Furniture Village sale this Easter. Save even more on a huge choice of sofas, dining and beds. In-store and online. We're sure there's something for you in the Furniture Village sale. But hurry, many offers end Easter Monday.
You know your business, what keeps you up at night, and the moments that make it all worthwhile. You know your 5-year plan, and that you really want to be there in 2. We know we can help you get there. Barclays offers unsecured loans of up to £100,000 that can be with you in days or even hours. To apply for a loan that's right for your business, search Barclays Business Loans. Let's go forward. Subject to status, T's and C's apply, guarantee may be needed.
Iain Dale, text 84850. This is LBC.
8 minutes to 12 here on LBC. I've said this before, and I do think often we hear what we want to hear. And these two tweets, I think, show this. Adam says, Iain Dale being completely schooled by Alastair Campbell on LBC at the moment. It seems like Iain is in complete denial about the consequences of a no-deal Brexit, but it makes for great listening, good show. Debbie, on the other hand, says, Iain Dale keeping Alastair Campbell in his place. First time I've heard him being told he is so wrong so effectively. Well done, Iain. Well, you pays your money, you takes your choice.
Well done, Iain.
A tweet here from somebody who says, can you ask Alastair why he's not put himself forward as a candidate in the European elections? Is he afraid he would be defeated?
No, I'm working at the moment for the People's Vote campaign, and it's not a political party. And also, I'll be honest. I mean, fair play to Andrew Adonis. I'd find it difficult at the moment to stand for the Labour Party until I know with absolute certainty what the policy is going to be.
But you'll vote Labour, will you?
I'll vote Labour, I would imagine, but I'm not going to vote Labour if it's kind of this sort of trying to look one way and the other. I'd think about it. I don't know. I'll think about it. I hope the Labour Party is clear that the policy that Tom Watson set out today, that John McDonnell repeatedly sets out, that Keir Starmer repeatedly says, that there has to be some element of a people's vote attached to the outcome of these negotiations. I will definitely.
But if you don't vote Labour, you've got three choices: Green, Change UK, or the Liberal Democrats. Which one of those has the most coherent stance on Europe, do you think?
I guess you'd have to. I mean, look, the one with the most historic sort of commitment to that, I guess, is the Liberal Democrats and the Greens. I mean, Change UK. I think you alluded to one of the problems perhaps with them is that we don't really know. If you're, I mean, I did say earlier that these are not elections about health and education or what have you, but I think that people are kind of waiting to see what sort of policy proposals they would make in these other important areas. But look, I want to vote Labour. I've always voted Labour in every election in my life.
But to be clear, you won't if they continue with their current policy.
I think if there is a lack of clarity about what their attachment and commitment to the principle of a second referendum, which is their policy. It is their policy, but the tone around that policy, I think, is very important now we're at the European elections. So, and by the way, can I rebut something you said earlier?
You can in a second.
As I thought it was.
But I just want to say, Anne Widdecombe, she says she's not voting Tory for the first time ever, I think. She's going to vote for the Brexit Party. So you could be emulating Anne Widdecombe in your voting
I don't believe I will ever emulate Anne Widdecombe in any shape or form whatsoever.
So where did you find it mentioned?
I've found it mentioned in two separate places. First of all, I texted my expert on the Good Friday Agreement. It's not Tony Blair, by the way, although he is an expert, but it's somebody else who says, yes, it is, and he's just pointed me to the places.
That'd be Jonathan Powell, then?
No, it's not Jonathan Powell either. But I can scroll through further, but it's in
I'm bored already.
It's in there.
Richard is in
I
Kensington.
was right and you were wrong.
If you say so. Richard, what would you like to ask?
Schooled again.
I wanted to ask Alastair why he keeps repeating the same argument about it being an uninformed debate when you'd have to retrospectively apply that to all elections, and we'd have to deministerialise all our prime ministers, because a lot of people use hyperbole in the run-up to an election.
I don't think I have made that argument much today. I mean, the point I made was that I think that the Brexit... Look, if you talk about a general election, and it's true, you get, parties get elected on manifestos and they try to implement them, and they implement a large part of it if they're a good, strong and stable government, and sometimes they have to go back on things that they've said. I think we all, understand that, and we can appreciate it or not. But I think what's very different here is this is a referendum where a hugely important choice was made by the country, and 3 years on, we have not been able to make sense of that.
You're just repeating the same arguments over and over. You're just repeating the same thing again. My question was, would we not have to apply that retrospectively?
No, I'm telling you why it's different.
Elections?
I'm telling you why I think this is different, because 3 years since the referendum, Theresa May having said Brexit means Brexit, we still don't really know what Brexit means, because the government has not faced the country with the fundamental choices attached to Brexit. So I think actually that's not a point I made in 2016, because frankly the point didn't arise then.
But that's another unfair argument you're making. You're basically blaming the pig's breakfast that Remainers that can't accept the election result have made as reasons and grounds for it being a bad choice in the beginning.
Yes, but hold on. As Iain said earlier in the programme, you can blame Remainers all you want. But the fact is, they've not been able to agree on anything in Parliament, and that includes Brexiteers. There are Brexiteers who want a soft Brexit and Brexiteers who want a hard Brexit.
Richard, thank you.
Agree.
We've only got time for one more question, and the honour of asking that is going to Tony in Blackwater. Tony, quick if you can.
Yeah, go on in. I'd like to read you out a quote first. Europe's nations should be guided towards a superstate without their people understanding what is happening. This can be accomplished by successive steps, each disguised as having an economic purpose, which will eventually, irreversibly, lead to a federation.
Okay, who's that from?
That's Jean Monnet. Jean Monnet, founding father of the Coal and Steel Agreement, which led up to where we are
So what's your
today.
question?
What does Campbell see as the future of the EU?
Okay.
Well, I certainly don't see that, and I think that is one of the kind of myths and fantasies that people like Nigel Farage have very successfully exploited. You do find people in the European debate who are out and out federalists. There are some. But this idea that, and this is why I was so angry with Jeremy Hunt last week when he went to Japan and told those Japanese students that Europe wants to become one country. That's a lie. The idea that
a lot of the leading politicians do.
No,
though.
they don't. Does Macron want to be? Macron, when he went to Notre Dame the other day, was he president of Europe or president of France?
He wants a European army.
He wants a proper European defence force, which when you look at what's happening in America is not that mad an idea. He does not want French soldiers to come under British command any more than a British general would want British soldiers under French command.
Unfortunately, we've run out of time.
I think I schooled you there, Ian. Sorry,
do you really? We could go on for another hour or maybe even more, but we're not going to, because I would like to hear at 3 Ian Payne, but next Majid Nawaz.
Thank you, Ian. Coming up, Greta Thunberg, the 16-year-old Swedish schoolgirl behind the global school strike for climate movement, will be meeting Michael Gove, our Environment Secretary. Surely it's a good thing the young people are so involved in causes. Before that, Labour's Deputy Leader Tom Watson has warned his party that it must back a second referendum on EU membership as the only way to defeat Nigel Farage's Brexit party. Is anything possible at this stage to halt Nigel Farage's barnstorming start to the EU elections campaign? But first, at least 192 people, including 35 foreigners, were killed and hundreds injured as a string of blasts ripped through